In February, Valve hosted the most recent Steam Next Fest. I usually don't look at these, but this time me and a friend decided to go through a few games together. We played all types of games, but as you could have guessed, I was most interested in the 2D Metroidvanias. The two of these I got to try were Biogun and Islets, and after playing both for a bit, I came to the conclusion that these games were really average. Biogun was just an average two-stick shooter Metroidvania, and Islets was just an average Metroidvania. So, going into playing Nine Souls, I was expecting something pretty similar. And boy, was I blindsided by this game. If Nine Souls is an 18-wheeler, then the previous two games were just Hot Wheels in comparison. Imitations rather than something new. But before we dive into what makes this game so special, let's get some background. Nine Souls is a 2D action platformer, set in what the developers call a Taopunk environment. Taopunk is a portmanteau of Taoism and punk. For those who don't know, Taoism is a religion originating in China, which has a focus on finding harmony with the Tao, meaning literally a way. You probably recognize the yin-yang, a Taoist symbol. Analogs of this symbol can be seen in the demo of what we have so far. As for punk, it refers to the punk movement of the 1970s, but in this instance I feel it relates more to the techno-inspired parts of the game. Think cyberpunk. The game was developed by Red Candle Games, a Taiwanese studio of 12 members with 2 games already under their belt. Their first in 2017 was a game called Detention, an atmospheric horror side-scroller set in a school in 1960s Taiwan. The school is full of haunted beasts, and the protagonist has to figure out how to escape. Their second game, Devotion, released 2 years later, but it's first person and set in the house of the protagonist in 1980s Taiwan. With Nine Souls, Red Candle is taking a step in a totally different direction, and so far, it's looking really good. Instead of horror, Nine Souls was inspired by Hollow Knight, Sekiro, and Katana Zero. Pieces of each of these games laid the foundation for Nine Souls. With this, Nine Souls has some of the best feeling combat I've seen in a while. The people at Red Candle have spent 2 years polishing the combat system of this game, and it shows. But after this, one question still remains. Why does the combat work? To figure that out, we gotta start with the basics, movement. You start the game off with a dash ability and a wall climb ability. Your dash only works on the ground, but it feels very fluid and gives a few iframes to the player. Its main uses in combat are to close the distance between enemies, get behind them to launch an attack, and to dodge away from opponents. My only criticism of the dash is that there's no visible recharge, and the recharge is slow enough to where it's hard to guess when you'll be able to dash next. But that comes with time playing the game rather than anything else. The wall climb is just your standard, run-of-the-mill, custom-cut Home Depot copper wire wall climb. You jump, you hit the green wall, you climb the green wall, and not much else. It doesn't play too much into combat besides making it easier to bait enemies in some situations. Other than that, the character Yi just feels good to move around. However, there are a few abilities that we didn't get to try out in the demo. You know how I said that you weren't allowed to dash in the air? Well, that was a lie. In the trailer, it shows an air dash, so we can only assume that we'll get it later on in the game. The implications of this is that many enemies will be made easier to skip because you'll be able to jump and dash right over all of them. There's also a grapple move showcased, but I doubt this will spawn anything but a gimmick boss or platforming area. In addition to those two, a double jump is also shown. One movement that isn't included though, that I personally like, is the pogo. I love pogoing. In my opinion, it's the best implementation of a strategic melee attack. At the same time as you're attacking, you can use the attack to put yourself in a better position. With that being said, it can also trivialize some encounters, and I can see why a developer would be hesitant to put that in their game. So, in the demo, you can only attack to the side, and your attack doesn't do much damage, so its main use within the game is to attack when the enemy isn't attacking, and this doesn't happen very often outside of a boss fight. And that's because of Nine Souls' level design. The design of the map is heavily inspired by Katana Zero, in that most rooms have low ceilings and the overall map doesn't have much verticality either. When entering a room, everyone comes at you at once in a straight line, which forces the player to think creatively in the way that they'll deal with all of the enemies. With a mixture of close and long-range foes, just attacking is pretty hard in a room like this, so you're just gonna have to... Wait, is that the famous YouTuber and Sekiro player, Xanathar865?
No way. It's me, professional Sekiro parry god Xanathar865, and I have stolen my man Redtreevortex's microphone so I can yell at you about why the parry in Nine Souls is the best thing since the parry in Sekiro, which is the best thing since sliced bread. A parry is something us Giga Chad gamers hear a lot about in video games. In fact, There's a pretty banger video on the subject right here on this channel. However, it's done differently in almost every game, and it is very difficult to nail. But 9 Souls comes pretty gosh diggity darn close. The parry in 9 Souls works like this. When an enemy attacks you, you press your parry button the moment the attack would hit you, causing you to block the damage, deal some damage to the enemy, and gain a single bar of chi. This on its own isn't too unique. It's very similar to the parries in Dead Cells, Blasphemous, and of course Sekiro. However, there are plenty of smaller details that make this parry system incredible. Everyone knows that a parry is a defensive skill that can be used to chain into offensive skills that are often very high-risk, high-reward situations. In 9 Souls, however, your parry should be one of your primary offensive skills. Remember that chi thing I mentioned? Well, as long as you have at least 1 bar of chi, you can dash through an enemy and attach what's called a food charm to it. Then you can detonate the food charm, which gets rid of all of your chi and does a bunch of damage. The more chi you have, the more damage you deal. This food charm system allows you to deal massive damage as a reward for parrying, and it tends to be what lets you shred through enemies. In short, you deal more damage by parrying an attack and food charming than you do by spamming attack. But what if an enemy is just kind of chilling and not really attacking you? Well, that's where your attack comes in. Attacking in 9 Souls is a very quick and fluid motion that does very little damage and lasts only a few frames. Additionally, your parry can animation cancel off of the end of an attack, basically allowing you to spam attack and quickly parrying when the enemy goes on the offensive. This whole thing allows you to be constantly on the offensive, and when you get into a loop of attack, parry, food charm, repeat, that loop gets the fight going real good. Now I know, not everyone can be an absolute parry god like myself, so you're probably thinking, "Wah, Mr. Xanathar865, what if I'm bad at video games and I keep parrying too early?" To which I respond to you, that's okay too. When you parry slightly too early in 9 Souls, you will be subject to some damage, but the damage will be less than an actual attack, and it can't actually kill you. Additionally, most of the damage you took will be converted into a gray bar that attacking enemies will restore. This only happens when you miss a parry, and guess what? You still get a bar of chi for doing it. This makes parrying less of a high risk and more of a bread and butter system. Now, I'm sure that some of you are still like, parrying sounds too risky. I think I'll just play the game like Dark Souls and dodge through everything. Ha! You fool! You absolute crab stomper. You actually can't do that. The game is 2 steps ahead, and has added a cooldown to the dodge. It's not too noticeable, and it won't impede your general mobility much, but it's significant enough that you can't spam it. This encourages you further to use the parry system, and basically allows you to dodge to be primarily an offensive mobility skill for closing gaps and getting behind enemies. I'd also like to mention that some of the reason the parry is so useful in this game is because of some smaller details. For example, the sound that plays when you parry lets you know if you got a successful parry or an imprecise one, or if you just missed it and took damage. Also, most attacks have sound cues that help you time your parries so that you can hit them. There are also various visual cues for some attacks. One of the game's bosses, the Red Centaur, has these attacks where his weapon turns red, and those attacks cannot be parried. If all of this doesn't already feel like a lot, fun fact: you can do it all in the air! You can attack in the air, and hitting enemies while doing so causes you to bounce a bit, allowing you to stay airborne. You can also parry in the air, which also keeps you airborne. You can't dodge in the air, in the demo at least, but that also just encourages the use of parrying in combat. This aerial system allows you to maintain the flow of combat, even after jumping or falling or, tripping on your controller and accidentally pressing the jump button or something. All in all, almost every move in Yi's kit as of the demo encourages the use of parries, and they will end up being your bread and butter throughout combat. And as a bonus, you feel like an absolute badass when you pull one of these things off. When I said this system is the best thing since Sekiro's system, which is the best thing since sliced bread, I meant it. And I meant it in the sense that maybe if the bread could parry like that, it would have been able to defend itself against such slices. Now that I have successfully caused 60% of you to click off the video, either in eagerness to go play 9 Souls, or in fear for your very life, let me release my man Redtreevortex from his semi-eternal prison to continue his slightly more, better explanation about this game. If you want to hear more of my stupid bullshit, that's too bad, because I'm too lazy to upload videos more than, 3 times a year. But you can hold on to hope by clicking the link that I'm forcing Red to put in the description. That being said, I'm off. Enjoy the next 48 hours. Take it away, Red.
As As Zan said, the parry mechanic in this game is top tier, but we haven't really answered our central question here, have we? Why does the combat work? Does it work because the parry is great? Well, no. A single mechanic can't make a combat system. It's the combination of multiple abilities which create complexity that makes the combat system. This complexity allows the player to make different choices to accomplish the same goal. Back in my mobile gaming days, I played this game called Marvel Contest of Champions. It was pretty fun for a while, but after a bit of playing I realized that if you swiped once, then tapped 3 times, then swiped again, you could do more damage than you could any other way. Technically, there were other ways I could play the game, but due to the lack of complexity, there was a clear solution to every single combat encounter. Of course, as a 13-year-old that probably should have touched more grass, I loved it. But it is awful game design. Combat shouldn't have a single solution. It's the presence of different solutions for the player to think of on the fly that create a fun experience. This can compound even further with enemy design that can force you to think differently. With all of this said, go try out the demo. It speaks louder than anything me or even professional Sekiro parry god Xanathar865 could say. Thanks for watching, guys. Please go sub to Xanathar. He makes some really good videos, and he's pretty underrated. And I should really say that this is the most a Kickstarter has excited me since Crowsworn. I realize that by the time I say this, or you're watching, it might not be open, but I'd keep tabs on it either way if I were you. Anyways, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next video. Peace.